as I passed my 80th birthday and retired at age 79, I've had a lot of time to reflect on my life. And I've thought about what happened with my political career and what happened with my career as a lawyer. And I ask myself, why didn't you rise higher, Jan? And I don't feel a crushing sense of failure. I think that looking back on it, I wasn't destined to rise much higher than I did. Uh, I guess I reached my peak politically when I ran for Attorney General in 1992 and came within 5 percentage points of winning. Um, but I lost, and that was it for me in terms of my rise. But I think about why weren't you more successful? When I wanted to be a congressman, that was my goal the whole time I was in the legislature, and even afterward, was to eventually become a congressman in the 3rd District, which is here in Portland. And Ron Wyden got elected to that job in 1978, 2 years after I got elected to the state Senate. He was smarter than I was. He went straight for the prize. He Where I wanted to start out in the state legislature and learn how to be a legislator and then move up to being a congressman, as Abraham Lincoln did, for example, and many others, he just went straight for it. And he was smart. And he got elected in 78, and he held that until 96, reelected every year, and never had a strong challenge for reelection. When he finally ran for the U.S. Senate in 96, he did have the challenge of his life. But not to get off on Ron Wyden, when he moved from the House to the Senate, that would have been my opportunity in 96 to run for Congress. Well, in 96 was when my late wife died, and she was on her deathbed as the campaign was going on, and I was watching it from the sidelines. And I wondered at the time how disappointed I should feel. And I really kind of felt that after I lost for Attorney General in 92, in the intervening 4 years, sort of life had moved on. I was enjoying practicing law, and I'd been doing that with my wife, and she and I had many pleasant lunches together, walking from the law office together to a restaurant. And the other thing that overwhelmed me at the time was watching Earl Blumenauer get elected to Congress and watching the TV ads. I had appeared with him and a number of other people in about 85, I think it was, or 84, when the proponents of the sales tax finally got it onto the ballot. For some reason, I guess they lacked the courage to just ram it through the legislature raw, because they knew it would be referred. The people go out and gather signatures and then have a statewide vote on it. But anyway, they had something called the town hall meetings, and there were a few people that presided at those, and one of them was a man named Jack Faust. And the they had one on the sales tax that was going to be on the ballot right away. And I went to that, and with some others, we said why we thought it was an awful idea and that we didn't think there was any very much support for it. And it all went very well for us in that town hall, even though Jack Faust, who was a staunch Chamber of Commerce type, but Earl Blumenauer was there, and when he got the floor, I couldn't believe how passionate he was about saying that that we needed the sales tax. And the thing he said that shocked me was he said, "I'm trying to get the word out to the natural gas company and the banks and these people that I'm on your side on this. We need this. I'm on your side." It was like he was in a campaign fundraising meeting. And I looked at that and I thought, wow, he's going to get money when he runs from these heavy Republican business groups. And so when he did run, I sat there at the sidelines holding the hand of my dying wife. I didn't spend very much time watching the television, but what little I did, there were ads for Earl Blumenauer, and they were flooding the TV. And I thought, oh hell, after all those years of waiting for that job to come open that I could seek, he would have crushed me. He had good ad people that were designing his ads. He was a pleasant looking man. I wouldn't have been able to. So it wasn't something wrong with my desire, or for that matter, the groundwork I'd laid. It was somebody else had figured out how to go for the big money and get ads. So that made me feel less disappointed that my wife was sick and I wasn't able to run. And that has structured my thinking about my modest accomplishments politically. I didn't make the decision at the very beginning that I was going to woo the support of the big money. I just didn't. And maybe that was a bad decision, maybe it wasn't. But I think it was an okay decision because my ethics and my standards and my idealism, I wasn't going to be able to cozy up to the banks and those conservative people and kind of say I was in favor of doing good things for working people, but when the time was right, vote for the big money. That wasn't in my. To me, that was a matter of honesty, and let me talk about honesty for a minute. When I was 6 years old, and have I told? I don't think I've told the story. When I was on the way home from school, they let us out early when they had this huge snowstorm, and we stopped off at a neighbor's house on the way home, and to dry out our jackets and so on, because that snow was so wet and so heavy, we'd gotten wet just. Maybe we'd been playing around in the snow too. But anyway, when Dad got home, he said, "Well, where are Jan and Karen?" And Mom said, "Well, they're not home yet." So he was, one of the only times I remember, he was afraid something might have happened to us because this snowstorm was violent. So he walked up to the neighbor's house and found us there and said, "You get home. You've made us worried." And so we streaked out of there. And in the process, I dropped my gloves. And as he walked along behind us, he picked the gloves up. We got back to the house, and he decided, well, I'm gonna deal with this son of mine right now about this lying he's been doing. And I had been lying. He would confront me about things that he wanted to get mad at me about, and I would realize that what to say that might soften the anger, and I'd say that, and then I'd get caught at it, and you lied to me. So he lay down on the couch and he called me in and he says, "Jan, where are your gloves?" And I said, "Oh, I've got them." He said, "No, where are they? I want to see them." I said, well, they're in the in the dresser drawer in the bedroom. Well, go get them. Well, I went in there and I opened the dresser. I knew I didn't have them. I didn't know where they were, but I knew I hadn't seen them until I got home. So I went in there and opened the drawer and closed the drawer, and I came back out and said, they're not there. And he says, well, go get them. And I said, well, I don't know where they are. He says, well, you must have dropped them out on the path. You've lied to me, telling me you knew where they are. Now you go get them. So by then it was dark, and I put my jacket back on and went out there and walked up the trail a ways looking for them. It was so dark I couldn't see anything, and I didn't have a flashlight. So I ended up standing behind the fence that kept the cow from walking into our yard, which was probably about 200 feet from the kitchen window. And he wouldn't let me come any closer. He yelled at me, "You stay back up there." So I stood there crying and watching them with the warm light glowing out from the kitchen, and I was out there in the cold. It wasn't freezing cold, but and cried, and they wouldn't let me come in. Well, that had a profound effect on me. I didn't lie much after that throughout my life. I really only remember once that I was deceptive in 12 years in the Senate, and that was when we passed the .08 bill for drunken driving. And I had learned in the negotiations that the women, mothers against drunk drivers, who were mostly people who lost a child or a family member to a drunk driver, in the negotiations they told us, well, if we could get, we'd be willing to drop our demand that we have a 30-day minimum jail sentence. If we could get that hard 30 days, we'd be willing to give up the .08 and leave it at 1.0. And in the negotiations, we had ended up with keeping it at .08, and then they made a big mistake in agreeing that there could be 80 hours of community service instead of 30 days in the county jail, because they went out and picked up garbage along the road, and it wasn't nearly as severe as the 30 days in jail that the women wanted. And they didn't realize that if they gave them a choice, they'd all choose the picking up garbage and cleaning the cages at the zoo rather than doing the 30 days. But I knew they were willing to give up on the .08 if we'd given them hard 30 days. And I didn't say that when I carried the bill, because I knew if I said that, there would immediately been an attempt to table the bill or send it back to committee and soften it, put it back up to the 1.0 and give them the 30 days in jail. Because believe me, there were a lot of people that didn't like it going from 1.0 to .08. And that was a huge thing. When I went back to Portland after the session, and I went with my buddies to have a beer after work, suddenly it became 2 bottles of beer and no more pitchers. You can't really count how much beer you're drinking when pitchers are being brought out one after another along with popcorn. Oh, have another glass of beer. But they would count 1 beer, 2 beer, I'm going home. So that was one of the most dramatic effects I had on the people in participating in that bill. So, telling the truth, I wasn't going, so I did. I was deceptive. I didn't tell my colleagues that they could have kept it at 1.0 if they'd have given a hard 30 days and the bill sailed through without anybody knowing the difference. But that's the only time in 12 years as a senator that when I brought things out of committee or whatever, that I didn't disclose what I knew. Um, this After I went on to the Ways and Means Committee and gave up being chairman of the Judiciary Committee, the person that replaced me as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee was somebody that wanted to do what the banks and the businesses wanted, even though they were a Democrat. And they'd get up when they were carrying bills coming out of the committee that had some things in it that weren't all that good for the public interest. They would just kind of mumble it through. And so I took up a practice of getting up during the debate and explaining what was really in it, which I'm sure made the chair very uncomfortable, but it didn't jar them off of their fabrications. Anyway, that standing behind that fence and crying in the cold really had a profound effect on me, and in my marriage and in my relations with friends and all that. I have been, this is my opinion at least, a very truthful person. And I don't regret that, but if it would have required me to be disingenuous to get the money to rise up to higher office. And I made that choice early. I didn't think, now if I'm outspoken and really say what I believe, I probably won't be able to raise money. Other people were telling me that, but I was so intent on the issues I cared about that I thought would be good for people. I was like, listen, I'll pay whatever price I need to pay. I'm going for this. And they said, oh, you can't, you won't even be able to get reelected. Well, I got reelected twice. And so overall, I'm satisfied. I didn't get to be a congressman, but I got to keep my standards and my beliefs, and I got to practice law between legislative sessions. So I had a rewarding career in the legislature and in my law practice. And I've seen many people in politics that's all they've had, and it's a lonely world. It's a shallow, narrow world predominantly. So much for that.